Lengthened or stretch position exercises are being a little bit overhyped these days, in my opinion. Hey, everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I'm going to talk to you guys about this. Now, when I make that statement, I want to be clear on a couple things. I actually think lengthened positions are good. I think that there is a very good reason for any muscle that you have that's lagging to probably have at least one exercise in your rotation that puts it into a deep stretch to where you focus on that and get into that lengthened position. So I want to be clear when I say that, because a perfect example, watch the way I like to do my pull-ups. All right, this is pretty much a lengthened position exercise because you almost can't get to the top when you do a really, really wide grip pull-up like I'm doing almost at the edges of the rack. It's very hard to get into a shortened position anyways. You probably can't do it. Most people can't, in my experience. And so there is a lot of focus on the stretch at the bottom. But I'm also doing a barbell row here that does that to some extent, but not quite as exaggerated because we're doing a full range of motion towards the top. So my point when I say that, and the same thing with my benching and stuff, right? I like to do flat back wide grip benching. To build pecs. So again, I want to be clear here that I do think lengthened positions are important for hypertrophy, and I think they're very important for complete hypertrophy. And there's very, very good amount of growing evidence that in terms of the range of motion of an exercise that has the most potential, like if you were going to skip any part of an exercise, like if you were to say, okay, what half of an exercise seems to probably produce the most muscle growth? It would be the bottom half. If you had to pick between that and just the middle or the top. To some extent, right? More overall growth potential. But does that mean that the rest of the movement isn't important? And I'm going to say, no, there's a case to be made for, I think, most joint angles having some value for hypertrophy. Okay, and that is the point that I want to make with that. It's been a little overhyped, and I'm not saying it shouldn't be considered. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be getting into those positions because I think they are very, very valuable for gaining muscle, right? Very valuable for gaining mobility also. They do bring a lot to the table. So I want to be clear that I support that, but by that same token, you see me here doing a deadlift. The only study that looked at the deadlift for hypertrophy showed that it produced massive amounts of hypertrophy when done for volume on a conventional deadlift, just an FYI. So my point here is that I think it's easy for people to lose sight of this and to get obsessed with one thing. And I think that's a major problem when it comes to training. Instead of saying, hey, let's vary our training, let's do a couple different angles. Let's use a couple philosophies. Let's work a couple different rep ranges, right? When they get hung up on a single factor. And I feel like a lot of the lifting community at the moment, the evidence base is pushing in that direction of saying this is all that we need. This is all we should ever do. And this is then how we judge the effectiveness of a workout. And I've seen some of that of people assessing training and saying, oh, no, this exercise doesn't put a heavy stretch into the lengthened position. It should just be replaced with something else. Well, no, that's nonsense. Because a lot of these mid-range exercises and contracted position exercises, contracted being the shortened muscle positions, shortened lengths, are time proven. People have built tons of muscle using them forever. Okay? They built tons of muscle. Plenty of people have built extremely massive and impressive physiques using those exercises. So to pretend that they don't work or they're useless, come on. Right? And it seems like, again, the community goes back and forth. Remember for a while when you saw everyone promoting contracted position stuff? People say, what do you mean? How about cable flies? Pretending that cable flies could somehow have magical properties that a bench press wouldn't have, for building the chest. Because you have a squeeze at the top, you have more tension at the contracted position at the top. How about glute bridges and hip thrusts? right? Because look at the EMG activity. Usually when people hook an EMG up, man, a lot of those contracted position movements really light up an EMG. And remember when that was being argued, that that's all that mattered, you know, the contracted position, because that's where we have the potential for the most muscle fibers to be contracted at once because the muscle is now shortened. See the issue here? That was the hypothesis. And then look at the EMG, the activity there, and look at it. So the muscle contraction is higher because the muscle is fully contracted. Therefore, the most fibers have the most potential. And that's a nice theory. Now you're seeing people go the other direction. All right? Why can't we do sane stuff and say, hey, maybe both of these things have value? Maybe they're both important. Maybe the people who all historically have said, hey, you should probably do a couple different exercises for every muscle. And if you have a muscle that's a weak link, like my arms, you might need 3. You know, perfect example, the same training week I'm making this video. Because again, these videos are over a month old by the time they come up. See me doing 2 separate different types of presses and then a laying tricep extension. My triceps need more work, right? Same thing for biceps. I'm doing a pull-up, underhand grip row, and then I do curls afterwards. So 3 different movements hitting my biceps, both upper days. Why? Because my arms are a weak link. Okay? And I'll go so far as to say that if you have a muscle that really needs a lot of work, doing a big multi-joint movement for it and an isolation movement for it is probably not a bad idea. Working it from a couple different angles. And I would say the same thing with these different ideas. You know what? If you have muscles that really you're struggling to develop, you might want to think about both of those things. You know, are we picking exercises that are hitting it possibly in a shortened position? Are we having exercises that are working in a lengthened position? Are we doing maybe a couple of rep ranges? You know, let's look at all these different factors. And everyone wants to try to pin stuff down. Oh, the key is to the squeeze and the isometric and the shortened. Oh, the key is the stretch at the bottom. The key is the 8 to 12 rep range, right? The key is to isolate it. The key is to hit it with the biggest compound movements to get the most tension. Everyone wants to take hypertrophy down to a single factor. That's not how it works. There should be some variety in your training. And what you're looking for is, are we creating mechanical tension on the muscle fibers that we want to grow? Do we have some general progressive overload present? Right? Are we working the muscle harder and increasing the workload over time? Right? Follow those general principles and keep your training varied a little bit. Be much wiser. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.